I now call on Stephen Kerr to open on behalf of the Scottish Conservatives. Around 6 minutes, please, Mr Kerr.
So I too would add my congratulations to the convener and the committee on their report and their ongoing work. I'm really pleased to be able to speak on the topic of parliamentary reform, and although the Minister might have thought he had seen the last of me as a sparring partner, here we go again. I want to assure him that my interest in parliamentary reform remains as strong as ever. And I must say, and I repeat, I have always found the Minister to be someone who genuinely believes in the scrutinising powers and the powers and authorities of this Parliament, and I respect that enormously. The committee's report covers a number of issues, such as hybrid working and proxy voting, as we've heard. In my time in the Parliamentary Bureau, I considered both of these issues when drafting the Conservative and Unionist Party's response to the committee. Personally, though, while I know that hybrid working is here to stay, I don't think it's necessarily changed everything for the better, and I absolutely believe there's no adequate substitution online for an in-person debate. However, I do believe in proxy voting, and I think it should exist fundamentally in the case of parental leave. And I also believe that the party whip's office should not be in charge of allocating proxy votes. The member on leave should be the one to choose who will vote for them, and I look forward to seeing how any upcoming trial might progress. And I think we should start that trial as quickly as possible so we can make the assessment. The report also mentioned the iterative approach Parliament will take in identifying and implementing reform going forward, and I fully support that as well. My concern is that in the past, on behalf of the Scottish Government, the Minister has raised a view that changes to Parliament would need to be done in one go, instead of as what he described as a piecemeal approach. But firstly, I would point out, gently, that parliamentary reforms are not his or the Scottish Government's gift to give. His comment actually highlighted something that I'm deeply concerned about, which is the blurred lines between government, the executive, and Parliament, and how that has been allowed to happen over the last couple of decades since devolution. He simply assumed, I think, in the answer he gave in a previous debate, that the government's word would be final in respect to parliamentary reform. Now, the SNP view, sometimes I'm afraid, and this is the perception I have, Minister, presiding officer to the Minister, that the SNP view this Parliament as a branch of government. And I fear that Parliament sometimes has started to succumb to this view. And of course I will.
Minister. There's nothing I can do about Mr Kerr's perceptions of what I say and his interpretations, but I fear he has veered quite far from what my intention was. If that misunderstanding was because of anything I've said, I apologise, Mr Kerr, but I fear it might have been Mr Kerr's interpretation.
Stephen Kerr.
I'm very grateful for the Minister's clarification. Once again, he's been true to the colours that I did pin on him at the beginning of my speech, which is someone who is a genuine parliamentarian. Because what I would say about the iterative process of improvement and reform is that anyone that has had any connection with any kind of project management knows full well that this process has its merits. It delivers change in an agile way which allows for greater focus on individual changes. And so I was very pleased to see the committee back it, and I'm even more pleased to hear the Minister agree with it. And thirdly, it will be no surprise, it's no surprise to me that the Scottish Government at one time, and I accept the Minister's correction, might have wanted this done in one fell swoop, because that would have been a great excuse for not doing anything. But I receive his word as a man of honour that that is not the position of the Scottish Government, and he, as a Minister, has spoken it into the official record. Now,
Minister.
I fear, presiding officer, that Mr Kerr has reinterpreted his reinterpretation of what I said previously. What I did say was, at that set meeting we were at, that it was better to do parliamentary reform in the one big area. At no time did I say it was in the Scottish Government's control to do it. I have said throughout my speech here today and any other time that it's the Scottish Parliament that makes these decisions on how Parliament works.
Stephen Kerr.
And the Minister is showing admirable accountability to Parliament in the way that he is allowing me to be corrected through his interventions. And I am pleased to hear all of these interventions and welcome them. But I do hope the Minister, because I know his position is genuine, but I also hope it reflects that of his party, because sometimes I think the SNP quite likes a weakened Parliament, so that they as an executive can go roughshod over procedures and practices and conventions, such as I've mentioned in 2 interventions in relation to a forthcoming bill. But what should this Parliament be, Presiding Officer? I've long argued that the powers of this Parliament to scrutinise government are too weak. And government has ignored motions they don't like. The government has imposed its will on our acclaimed committee system. I'm afraid too often it appears to me, of course I will.
Katie Clark.
The member has got experience of another place. Does he not accept that all governments do that? And whilst he's absolutely correct in what he's saying, that is a feature of the executive, which is something that we collectively need to address.
Stephen Kerr.
I completely agree with that. And whether I was speaking here or in another Parliament, I would say the same thing. Parliament provides a absolutely crucially important constitutional role in checking and holding to account the powers of the executive. And that's true here as it is at Westminster. But I don't like to think that the government whips its committee members. But sometimes, frankly, I am left with that conclusion because of the evidence of my experience in this place since elected. And I don't think it's right, because of the design of the committee system, that we should be led by anything other than evidence that builds consensus in committees, that then produces reports that are based on evidence and not on political dogma. Committee rooms cannot simply turn out to be echo chambers for government orthodoxy.
Bob Doris.
I'll be summing up later on as Deputy Chair of the committee, but I'm just wondering if you think the Standards Committee has done its best to, without political interference, political dogma, a balanced view to reflect the views of Parliament in a very measured, responsible way.
Stephen Kerr.
I absolutely do, and I'm very pleased to be able to agree with Bob Doris on that point. I have wider concerns that come from this report in terms of the spontaneity of Parliament. And I'm afraid sometimes that, and it's not true today, before anyone intervenes, that sometimes the proceedings of this chamber sometimes feel like a stage-managed, scripted puppet show. And because of that, we're not getting the respect of people that observe our proceedings. It's quite hard to observe our proceedings. This debate, if you wanted to watch it, you'd have to go through a myriad number of Google searches and clicks to be able to find it. That in itself causes me concern, because this Parliament needs to have the respect, should earn the respect of the people of Scotland, but the people of Scotland need to be able to see the proceedings of this place. And it needs to be more spontaneous and more responsive. So, for example, the presiding officer has the power to call urgent questions. Why doesn't the presiding officer have the power to call an urgent debate? I think they should have that power. I said to the presiding officer the other day on leaving the Bureau, my motto is more power to the presiding officer.
And in that regard, the presiding officer will now seek the cooperation of the member in bringing his remarks to close, because I have been generous, as the member indeed has been generous himself in taking interventions.
You have indeed. I have much more that I wanted to say. But I will simply close on this point. The need for this place to be rigorous in its debate. The programme for government. May I close with the example of the programme for government? We all sat through a half hour where the First Minister enjoyed interruption-free, intervention-free speaking time, but the first response to that statement was a speech from Douglas Ross which was subject to interventions and interruptions. Now, I don't think the government should have protection from the rigours of this place. I don't think the First Minister needs the protection of the presiding officer to have that kind of time. And so I would simply say, in drawing a comparison with Westminster, with the Prime Minister, who gave that very important energy statement on the 8th of
Mr.
September.
Kerr, I think you are digressing a wee bit in terms of where you said you would end up. So we do want to allow other members, and I'm sure there will be opportunities in intervening across the afternoon.
I appreciate that point. I think I've made my point about rigour, spontaneity and debate, which this place needs to get a deserved reputation for.